Howdy. I want to quickly go over those eclipses that we began to talk about last week. The first thing I'd like to point out is that when the moon's in this position and the lit half of the moon is the left half and the right half is dark, that's what we see on the nighttime side of the Earth as a full moon. So you're looking at the lit side of the moon, and that's the night of a full moon. The first thing I'd like to point out is that a lunar eclipse happens on the night of a full moon. While not drawn to scale, the moon passes into the shadow formed by the Earth, the shadow that the Earth always drags around the solar system all the time. There are 2 points in the Earth's orbit where the moon's orbit crosses the ecliptic, and those are nodal points, believe it or not. They're called nodal points, and they occur about every 6 months. So you see a lunar eclipse often twice a year. Now the other issues is the moon's orbit is elliptical, and so its distance from the Earth is not always this constant, and so sometimes you have the moon farther away or closer, and that can lead to different conditions during the eclipse. So a lunar eclipse is a nighttime event and happens on a full moon. Oftentimes during these eclipse seasons, you have a lunar eclipse, and then 2 weeks later, you can have a solar eclipse. Because again, because of the tilt of the moon's orbit relative to our orbit around the sun, there are only 2 places in the Earth's orbit where the moon is at its nodal points and can block the sun. That's what a solar eclipse is. It's a daytime event, and we'll talk about it. So the moon's orbiting the Earth while the Earth is orbiting the sun. And when conditions are just right, and this happens on a new moon when the dark side of the moon is facing the daytime side of the Earth, it's a daytime event, as I said, and it happens on during a new moon. It's the opposite of a full moon. The shadow that the moon drags around itself all the time casts a shadow on the Earth. Now, what's more rare, a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse? Well, contrary to what people think, neither is more rare than the other. In fact, you often have them 2 weeks apart. It's just that a solar eclipse can only be viewed on Earth, can only be viewed a very small area, right? So it starts, and it may start when the shadow is over the ocean, and then as it grows to totality, only a small region, in this case I drew the United States, but only a small part of the world can see that eclipse. Whereas a lunar eclipse is visible from everyone who's on the nighttime side of the Earth. So about half the world gets to see every lunar eclipse, and only about 1% of the human population, or even less, can view a solar eclipse during a solar eclipse. The other thing that makes solar eclipse kind of special is some are not total because of the relative distances. If the moon is far away from Earth, the shadow it casts is small, and it sometimes doesn't even cover the entire sun. But when the moon is closer to Earth, it's more likely to be a total solar eclipse. The last one of those in North America was, of course, in August of 2017. Some of you may have gone to see it. It was spectacular, and I put some videos in Canvas that you can look at, in particular the Veritasium video, where the gentleman, Derek from Veritasium, goes to Madras, Oregon. I went to Oregon for that eclipse too. It was truly remarkable. We'll talk more about this in class.